Hi there, this is Jill and I'm in the garden today. I've been doing some planting, so I'm getting things ready for us and thought I'd show you some of the cool stuff that I've got going on because I'm doing some companion planting and I'll show you what that's all about, and I'll show you some of my weed control things that I've gotten used to and use over the years. Okay, to do companion planting I have a helpful guide in this book. And we've talked about it before, but it's my go-to, and I have a couple other resources, but this is the one I always have out in the garden with me. And that's my little cheat sheet. It is a real handy one of all the ones I have because it tells you the vegetable, who it likes to hang out with, who it doesn't like to hang out with. There's a symbiotic relationship between plants in nature. So what that amounts to is that plants have friends and plants have other ones that aren't so much friends. So what I've got going here is a little bit of companion grouping. I plant in beds like this because I can get more plants per square foot of garden. I don't have nearly as much of my garden area taken up with walkways because you can't grow food in walkways, so I get more food out of my space this way. These guys are tomatillas. They're sort of like tomatoes. I use them for green salsa. And then I've got the hot Hungarian banana pepper. Not banana pepper, but long pepper that I put in the salsa, and they grow really well together. They are good buddies. You can see this, it looks like plastic. It is biodegradable. So by the time next spring comes around and we want to plant, you won't see any of this plastic here. It'll all be decomposed into the garden. In the meantime, I get it all laid out, and it really helps with warming the soil. You can see how I've got it laid out here, and those three aren't planted into yet. It warms the soil, and it really helps keep the weeds down in between the plants, which if you've ever weeded carrots, it's a nightmare. And this is a lot of space, so weed control is pretty huge for me. So moving down this row, we have some eggplants. Got the last of my tomatillas and some more peppers. And then we have our tomato friends. Tomatoes really like parsley, basil, garlic. You know, the things that you would think to put with tomatoes in your food. They also get along in the garden. So I've got parsley planted in here with the tomatoes. And I'll put some basil in a little bit further down. I've got some garlic I needed to transplant. I'll probably add that in here a little bit. Those things, I don't notice so much improvement necessarily in the plants, but I do notice a decrease in pests, which is pretty huge. So I'm thinking that as these plants have a symbiotic relationship and get along, it makes the plants stronger and they repel pests better. Next I have, this will be, rows of beans, pole beans, and corn. They have a very symbiotic relationship as the beans are nitrogen fixers and the corn uses a lot of nitrogen. So they get along real well that way. They also are just friendly fellas that get along with about everybody in the garden. So they're creating a buffer between the tomatoes, who are a little fussy, and the squash. There's squash down at the end of this with cucumbers at the top, and over there in the far row, because there's a lot of plants that don't care for the cabbage family, are my cabbages. And there's the cucumbers again, because those guys get along okay. And then again, I've got the corn and the green beans who get along fabulously. They feed each other in the soil. They also create a buffer for my fussy tomatoes and peppers and the rest of the garden. So that's a little bit on companion planting. And using my guide from the Back to Basics book. One more thing that I'll show you as long as I'm here is these trellises. These are really cool. I'm trying not to step on the beds. That way there's not soil compaction within the beds. That's the other reason for doing these, is that they create a bigger zone of compaction-free ground for the plants to grow into. Because we just have this 2-foot walkway and a 4-foot bed. And so the ground stays softer and they have more space for their roots, and it makes them happier. But these trellises are really cool. This is the field fence that Mark uses to make fence out of. It's 39 inches. He makes a circle with it. It fits down nicely over 3 to 4 tomato plants. I used it also for the tomatillas. And they just grow up inside of there, and I don't have to trellis them or tie them up or anything. And it works really nicely. So that's what we've got going on in the garden.